Let's be honest for a second. We've all seen the stadium videos. 100,000 people, a sea of glowing phone lights, and just one guy standing in the middle of a massive stage with a tiny acoustic guitar. No backing band, no dancers, just him, a loop pedal, and an entire stadium singing every single lyric back to him like their lives depend on it. When you look at Ed Sheeran today, it's easy to think it was always meant to be this way. But if you pull back the curtain, you realize his story isn't about overnight fame or lucky breaks. It's a story about a kid who was rejected by every single person who mattered, on subway trains and cold London pavement, and who made it solely because he refused to have a plan B. Long before the Grammys, Ed was an awkward kid growing up in a quiet town in Suffolk. He wasn't the cool kid, he was the outsider. He had bright ginger hair, wore thick glasses, had a port wine stain birthmark on his face, and, to make things harder, he suffered from a severe stutter. Every time he tried to speak in class, the words would get trapped in his throat and the kids would laugh. Can you imagine that feeling? Wanting so badly to express yourself, but your own body won't let you. But then, two things saved him. First, his dad bought him an Eminem record, and Ed spent hours memorizing every fast-paced lyric, which miraculously helped him retrain his speech and cure his stutter. Second, he found an old guitar. When he held that wood and steel, he wasn't the bullied, stuttering kid anymore. He had a voice. By the time he was 11, after meeting singer-songwriter Damien Rice at a tiny show, Ed knew his destiny. He went home that night and wrote his very first songs. He didn't just want to play music, he needed to. At just 16 years old, Ed dropped out of school, packed a single duffel bag, grabbed his guitar, and bought a one-way train ticket to London. This is the part of the story that always breaks my heart, because the music industry was brutal to him. He would turn up at record labels, and they would look at this slightly chubby, ginger teenager and tell him straight to his face that he didn't have the look, his songs weren't radio hits, and that he should just give up. But Ed couldn't give up, because he had nowhere to go back to. Between 2008 and 2010, Ed was technically homeless. He spent years couch surfing, playing gigs just to have a place to sleep. When he ran out of couches, he slept on the London Underground Circle Line train, riding it back and forth all night just to stay warm. He even spent a few nights sleeping on the brick floor outside Buckingham Palace next to a heating vent. Think about the poetic irony of that, a homeless kid shivering outside the palace gates, completely unaware that a few years later, he'd be invited inside by the royal family to perform for the Queen. He played over 300 gigs in a single year. Sometimes he would play to an empty room where the only person listening was the guy cleaning the. Anyone else would have packed up and gone home. But every single refusal he received just became fuel for his fire. By 2010, Ed realized that if the traditional music industry wouldn't open the door, he would have to kick it down himself. He started posting raw, unplugged sessions on a rising YouTube channel called SBTV. No filters, no big studio production, just a guy bleeding his soul out over an acoustic guitar. The internet did what the record executives couldn't, it recognized pure, unadulterated talent. With the last bit of money he had, Ed bought a ticket to Los Angeles. He didn't know anyone. He just showed up at open mic nights across the city. And then, the universe finally blinked. A legendary actor and musician named Jamie Foxx saw this random British kid pour his heart out at a tiny club. Jamie was so blown away by Ed's hustle and raw talent that he let Ed sleep on his couch and use his recording studio. From there, the snowball became an avalanche. Ed released an independent EP that shot straight to #1 on iTunes without a single piece of label backing. The labels that had mocked him were suddenly begging to sign him. When the A-Team dropped, the world finally heard the voice of the boy from Suffolk. The albums that followed, Plus, Multiply, Divide, didn't just sell, they defined a generation. But success has a dark side, and Ed's journey wasn't suddenly entirely perfect. Just a couple of years ago, his world fractured. His pregnant wife was diagnosed with a tumor that couldn't be treated until after she gave birth, and in the exact same month, his best friend and the mentor who gave him his first big break, Jamal Edwards, tragically passed away overnight. Ed has spoken openly about falling into a deep, terrifying depression during that time, feeling like he didn't want to live anymore. And how did he cope? The exact same way he did when he was a bullied 7-year-old kid. He picked up his guitar and wrote through the tears. That is why I wanted to tell you this story today. Because Ed Sheeran didn't become a global icon because he was the most manufactured, flawless pop star on the planet. He became a superstar because he is us. He proved that you don't have to change who you are, how you look, or where you come from to conquer the world. You just have to be willing to bleed for your dream, to sleep on the floor when the world tells you you're nothing, and to keep singing until the whole world has no choice but to listen. So the next time you feel like giving up on whatever your dream is, remember the ginger kid with a stutter and a loop pedal. Because if he can make it from the cold pavement of Buckingham Palace to selling out stadiums around the globe, what's stopping you? Keep pushing. Your time is coming.